Welcome to WeAreSC Game Day. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, we've got homecoming this weekend. USC welcomes the Arizona Wildcats to the Coliseum, and I know this entire USC program, from Clay Helton on down, is happy to be in the Coliseum this weekend. They're on a skid right now. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games, all 3 losses away from the Coliseum. This team, for whatever reason, any number of reasons, they play so much better at home than on the road. They're going to get a chance to kind of get things right before they go on the road again the following week. But you've got an Arizona team that's coming in, and it's the Khalil Tate show for Arizona. He's the quarterback. He's the best running back. He'd probably be the best wide receiver, probably be the best defensive player at a couple positions too. He's that good, and there will be that much attention. Khalil Tate, he went to high school at Sarah in Gardena. This was a guy that USC recruited. This is a guy that knows the USC program very well. He does not want to leave Arizona without picking up a win against USC. I would expect him to come in kind of on fire and let it all hang out against Arizona as he tries to pick up a win for his team.
Well, I think we both would agree that the last time he showed up in the Coliseum a couple years ago, in the second half, he was virtually, if I recall, unstoppable. And, that's going to be a tall order for a football team that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. The SC defense in the secondary, that could be a real concern.
Yeah, it's the last 2 years really kind of have followed a little bit of the same script where USC runs out to a big lead and then has to hold on as Arizona tries to come back. This is a game for USC. Both these teams are 2-1. It's actually kind of an interesting thing in the South this weekend. 4 teams are 2-1, and they're all playing each other this weekend. But this is that chance for USC. Again, the national championship, the college football playoff, clearly out the window. This is something where if you really are going to win the Pac-12 South, if you really have a chance to win the Pac-12 conference, this is a game that you not only need to win, but I think you need to win big, and I think you need to start actually showing, either proving it to the fans certainly, but proving it to yourself that you can go and blow this team out. The wins that you have, certainly the one against Stanford, looking kind of less and less like a big statement home win. I think that this team needs to generate some momentum. For you, what side of the ball, I guess, does that start on? What side of the ball for USC offense, defense, do you feel like needs to come out and really kind of get things going against Arizona?
Well, I think it's the offense. The reason for that is, and let me just revisit one point you made that I think is important. You mentioned Stanford. Well, on Thursday night, Stanford got blitzed by UCLA. That means the Pac-12 South is going to be even tighter. That means that SC has to win their home games. UCLA picked up a road win. Let's not forget it's a road win. SC has not won on the road. So the offense for USC is very interesting. Most of the complaints up until recently is that SC looks good in the first half, and they don't do anything in the second half. Well, against Notre Dame, they outscored Notre Dame 24-13 in the second half, and they looked like a pretty good team. The question is against Arizona, which is really not very good on defense at all, is can they take the second half of Notre Dame and turn it into 4 quarters against Arizona? Because as you pointed out, if Khalil Tate plays the game of the season for him, based on what's happened with the SC secondary and injury at linebacker inside, and let's face it, the discipline on the defensive ends, not real good on the edge. You know what? SC's got to put this team away early and keep the pedal on the metal. So offensively, I think they have to outscore Arizona.
And I think what's interesting about this is that you've got that marquee step kind of run game going against Notre Dame. I think there's a lot of interest in what could he do against Arizona, because Arizona is a defense that recently has thrown out that three down lineman look. And if you're physical enough, you have been able to just pound this Arizona defense on the ground as many times as you wanted. You know, it seemed like teams could run for 400 yards against Arizona if they set out to do it. This year, Arizona trying to change that a little bit, giving some different looks. What's interesting is when you look at the stats, I mean, this team is having the ball thrown all over them. They're 11th in the Pac-12 in pass defense, and you're talking 128th in the country. It's not like, you know, that you know, you can be 11th in the conference and still rank pretty highly in the country. This is a team that is having the ball thrown all over them. Because of that, you know, they're 118th in total defense in the country. Rush defense, it's not as bad. They're putting up better numbers, whether that's because teams are just throwing the ball all over them so they don't need to run, or whether that's because they are giving that, you know, a little bit of a better look up front. That's going to be interesting because, again, I know a lot of people are going to think, here's Arizona. You saw what USC did against them last year, where Ronald Jones had or 2 years ago when Ronald Jones had a big game. Can you do that again? I don't know. You know, does Graham Harrell look at the stats and say, we can throw the ball all over this team? Keaton Slovis certainly got some momentum going in the second half last week, and I think you can say, you know, that he's ready. Just a true freshman, still doesn't have a ton of time because he missed that game, but it feels like you can put a game on his shoulders. That balance between run and pass, I think, is going to be fascinating to watch against Arizona, specifically if things don't start clicking early on.
Well, I think the first thing Arizona will do, or attempt to do, is to take Michael Pittman out of the game like BYU tried to, like Notre Dame did. Okay? The question is, with Graham Harrell, is which Graham Harrell is going to come out and call plays? Is it going to be the Graham Harrell that says, we're going to pass, which should be effective, as you pointed out, or is he going to be the Graham Harrell that says, if we need to run the ball, you know, 35 times, and that's what we'll do? I mean, logic is you're going to throw the ball against Arizona. I'm going to make a prediction, and, you know, people can sit there and go, is he too old now to make these predictions? But I think the key offensively to the season is Marquise Stepp. I think Marquise Stepp can change the whole complexion of a defense if they'll let him play. I mean, let's face it, Pavai Malapaya is not coming back anytime soon. And with all due respect to Stephen Carr, I think he's starting because he's an upperclassman. But the guy who really can make the difference, and if you don't believe me, just ask Notre Dame's defenders, is Marquise Stepp. And I don't buy for 1 minute that he was so tired that he couldn't carry the ball 11 times or 15 times or 18 times. To me, he's got to carry the ball 15 or 20 times a game starting now. I think that he's so good that he is going to take all the pressure off of Slovis. He'll drive Arizona crazy if Graham Harrell is willing to have some sort of balanced attack. I want to see play action passes off of Marquise Stepp. I think that they can double team Pittman all they want, but if you double team Pittman and you play action pass, somebody's going to be open. And by the way, let's find out if Pittman doesn't go in motion a couple of times and they don't just sit there and say, here I am. You don't have to adjust anything. Let's see him, you know, go into the slot maybe and go in motion. But I think, honestly, SC's offense should roll, and hopefully Stepp is a big part of it.
I think that's the key. USC's offense needs to put up a bunch of points against Arizona. I think there's been too many weeks where, you know, you get to the end of the game and it's, you know, you guys talked about the coaches talked about running 85, 90 plays a game, and you look and it's, you know, you're creeping into the 60s or maybe you got in the 70s, and there's always sort of well, they did this and their offense did this, and, you know, it doesn't feel like the Ohio States and the Oklahomas, you know, well, the defense did this. No, they stepped out of the field. They ran play after play after play. They ran it quickly, and they put up a ton of yards and a ton of points. If this Arizona defense is the kind of defense that should allow you to do that, it's not acceptable that Michael Pittman just is pushed out on the outside and it's, well, they took him away. What are we going to do? Because you don't have enough other guys really stepping up and dominating the game. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a great game against Notre Dame, but it's a little bit too few and far between when teams can do what they want to do. They can say, we're taking this guy out of the game, and they're not burned repeatedly by other guys. There's too much talent, I think, on the USC offensive roster to do that. And like you mentioned, Marquise Stepp, he's a little bit of that get out of jail free card. You know, it's if you need to think about what to run, just let him get you 4 or 5 yards on a quick play, and then come up with something after that. Like you said, he's so fascinating because we've seen what he can do, and it just feels like defenses don't want to line up again after he runs. It's, you know, he's not anywhere close to Jim Brown, but it gives, you know, the stories you hear about, you know, just he can be so demoralizing to a defense where they just think we got to tackle this guy again. And I think that's something that you can do against this. And we're both talking about needing to score a lot of points. That's because we buried the lead a little bit on the other side of the ball for USC. The biggest news, I think, coming into this game is who's not going to play for USC, or at least not likely to play. Nickelback Greg Johnson is already ruled out, had a shoulder injury against Notre Dame. It's likely Max Williams, a true freshman, get used to hearing that, a true freshman will start at nickel for USC. He started against Washington, was not available against Notre Dame for a violation of team rules. And then you look at the outside cornerbacks. Elijah Griffin has a bulging disc. That acted up against Notre Dame, taking him out of the game. He's listed as doubtful. I think if you could go maybe even less than that would be sort of my guess for his availability. And then Isaac Taylor-Stewart, another, you know, potential starter at cornerback. He has a high ankle sprain suffered against Notre Dame. He's listed by Clay Helton as a game time decision. I think, again, that's probably maybe even a little optimistic. I think it's safe to go into this game thinking you're going to get a true freshman in Max Williams starting at nickelback. You're going to get a true freshman in Chris Steele starting at outside cornerback, which he's a little bit like Keaton Slovis now, where you've heard his name so much, it almost feels weird to call him a true freshman still because he's been that good and played that much. But then on the other side, you're probably going to get a true freshman in either Jaden Williams or Dorian Hewitt. But so those are your, you know, 4 cornerbacks, and then Kalana Makala is probably going to back up Max Williams, another true freshman. You've got 3 cornerback spots, a nickelback and 2 outside corner spots, probably manned by 5 true freshmen. And that is a sort of mouthful of a lead up to say, wow, against Khalil Tate, against this Arizona offense, where you talk about the numbers put up by the Arizona defense that are just horrific. The Arizona offense, second in the conference in rushing offense, second in the conference in passing offense. You're talking about a top 35 national offense when it comes to rushing, top 20 when it comes to passing, 9th in the country in total offense. This is an offense, granted, they have not played phenomenal defenses this year, but this is an offense that has gotten it done, and they're going to go against a very, very inexperienced group in the secondary, specifically at cornerback. That's the setup. What are you taking? What are you looking for from specifically that group, the defensive backs, against this Arizona offense?
Well, they have to really stay disciplined. They really have to. Let me just give an example. What I think Marquise Stepp can do for the SC offense, J.J. Taylor can do the same thing with the Arizona as a running back. You can imagine if Tate starts running a triple option sort of deal where he run, option, or pass the ball, so to speak, what he could do to true freshmen with the bright lights of the Coliseum going on national television. They could really have some issues. And those issues are compounded by the front 7 of USC, so to speak. You know, it's no secret that teams are able to get around the ends of SC on reverses and everything else. So you can imagine if you have a secondary that's so young going against a veteran offense in Taylor in the backfield along with Tate and the productivity. And then you say, well, what happens if they start running reverses on the edge and all sorts of things? Plus, we all know that inside IA is not going to be playing because he's out. That was announced on Thursday. And I have a lot of confidence in Donovan Maga. Go forth, I think can do a good job, but he's still a rookie. There's a lot of question marks on the SC defense going to go against this offense of Arizona. And as you put it, as bad as they are on defense, the Wildcats are pretty good. And let's not forget, this is a Pac-12 South game. It could be an elimination game for Arizona. SC cannot afford to lose a game, which would put Utah in the position that if SC lost another game and Utah wins out, that win over Utah that SC had in September would be nullified. That's kind of the ace in the hole for SC, this win over Utah. In the end, it could come down at the end of the season, beat UCLA, be tied with Utah, SC goes because of the tiebreaker. But that's why this game is so important. Plus, as you pointed out, it's a home game. SC is going to go play a Friday night game the following week at Colorado. I just checked the weather report. They said the low is going to be 27 degrees. The high is going to be 51. The game's at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. So that's why this game is so important. And this is why it's so important that SC's defense be disciplined against this offense of Arizona. Because if Arizona gets off, it could be a real struggle.
And again, it feels like every week, or at least every game, you're up against someone who does something really well that USC struggles with. And we heard from the defensive players this week, specifically the front four. Drake Jackson was saying the most important thing for them is going to be maintaining gap assignments, staying in their rush lanes, because if you get a defensive, someone in the interior of the defensive line gets pushed out a little bit and that gap opens up between that player and the defensive end, Tate could be gone. And one of the things that's going to be interesting is Khalil Tate missed a game. He missed the game against UCLA a few weeks ago. He did not run a whole lot in a blowout loss to Washington last week. Is he fully healthy? That's always the question. And the last time we saw Khalil Tate, he was not fully healthy going against the USC defense. So that's a question that will get asked. If he's fully healthy, I think probably the most dynamic quarterback in the Pac-12 pretty easily. If he's not, then you start looking at what the rest of that Arizona running game can do. And you mentioned J.J. Taylor, who's never going to be confused for Marquis Stepp physically, but has that ability to just sort of drive a defense crazy, just that sort of small, shifty stature, and can just take off and go. But Gary Brightwell is a bigger back. Nathan Tilford, who got a ton of early interest from USC, he's ending up there. There's 4 running backs that Arizona employs. When you look at J.J. Taylor's numbers, just 301 rushing yards on the season. This is a guy that can put up some massive numbers that we've seen over his career. But they spread the ball around a lot. And when you look at Arizona, because of that, because of the numbers they have at wide receiver, where it's not like Notre Dame, where you had Chase Claypool and he was clearly the number one target. Arizona has a lot of guys everywhere that can play a lot of spots. You start thinking this is a team that can sort of dial some things up where you're hitting the outside. And like you mentioned, Khalil Tate, you can keep the ball in his hand a lot and give him a bunch of different options. The inside handoff, the run around the edge, let him go RPO, and maybe there's a pass there. And that's where it all comes into play, right? Can the defensive front put up enough of a wall to knock out a few of those options? And then can those young guys in the secondary plaster and stick with their receivers on a run play that takes 4 or 5 seconds to develop because Tate can move, either designed or just kind of scramble? Those are the questions that these young players at corner are going to have to answer. Do they bite when it looks like Khalil Tate's going to run and then he pulls up and boom, it's 55 yards over your head? I mean, those are kind of the disciplined things that have not always been delivered on when it comes to the USC defense. You talk about discipline, you talk about fundamentals. Every week we talk to the defensive players, usually after the Wednesday practice. Same thing. We need to be this, we need to be that. Discipline, fundamentals, it comes up all the time. This is an offense that can make you pay in a big way if you're not there. I mean, what's your expectation on that? Can they get that together, or is this something where next week we're saying, okay, maybe the next week, we'll be able to land on all these things?
Well, we're coming into the seventh game of the season, and pretty much what you see is what you are. But one of the big elephants in the room that does give me a lot of trepidation is the poor tackling. You got Tate that can run. You got Taylor who can run. They need to be tackled. And if you're not a good tackler, SC's going to have some problems. We really don't know how good a tackler some of these true freshmen are going to be in a game. Okay. They're going to be jacked up to play. The question is can they maintain the discipline in tackling to go along with the others? So, like, they don't have enough to worry about. Tackling is going to be a big issue on defense besides the big inexperience. Missing Houston in this particular game could be an effect because he's a sideline to sideline guy, doesn't take on blocks if you run right at him. Maga is more physical, in my opinion. Goforth, we'll see what he can do. But really, I think that this is going to be a real test for Clancy Pendergast's defense.
And I'm interested to see what they do with Talanoa Hufanga. It was a couple years ago in the Coliseum where certainly in the first half, they told Marvell Tell, who was safety at the time, he's you. You're on him. You follow him wherever you go. And Marvell Tell shut Khalil Tate down for a half. Khalil Tate eventually kind of got things going in the second half. But I'll be interested to see if that's another thing they use, because Talanoa Hufanga certainly right now in the secondary, clearly the most reliable, the most experienced guy back there. Can you put him on Khalil Tate? Again, if that happens, you're asking a whole lot from those young cornerbacks. If they have to patrol everything back there, obviously with Isaiah Polamalu, the other safety back there helping him out, that's, maybe that's a wrinkle that you see. I'm interested to see how they use him, but really it all comes down to Khalil Tate. Can you keep him in the pocket? Can you make him make throws? He's completing the ball from the pocket, specifically on third down this year, completing the ball a lot at a much higher percentage than he has throughout his career. Still, I'll go ahead and take my chances with him trying to throw the ball 35, 40 times from the pocket in a game if you can take away his running ability, because he's still at 65% for the season, which is good, but certainly not what we've seen from Keaton Slovis, not what we've seen from big time quarterbacks.
Agree.
On the other side, again, I'm interested to see how Arizona's defense lines up. This is something where, are we going to be surprised if they come out in a pure 3 down, drop 8 formation? Can USC figure that out early enough? And
well, if they can't, then somebody's got to take Graham Harrell in the room and sit down and have a little come to reality check. Most coaches are going to say, what do you want to take away first from USC? Most of them will say, we'll take away the pass, because that's what they do. That's what they want to do. And they want to go to Pittman. So what did SC learn in these last couple of games? BYU or, Washington, Notre Dame. Look, it's not exactly a state secret what they're going to do. A guy like Step can change the complexion of the game to force them. Now, Arizona on defensive level will say, well, if we're going to get beat by USC, they're going to have to pound the ball and take it downfield. We are not going to get beat deep on a pass. We're not going to have, people crossing patterns. I think one thing to keep in mind on this one, which is interesting to me, is how many times SC will go to the tight end. Are we ever going to see them throw the ball down one of the seams to the tight end? Now, I know that Cromanoke had a pretty good game reception-wise, number-wise. But you know what? This is the type of game that if they're going to take away Pittman and, you get Step in a play action, it seems perfect to start throwing the ball to the tight end. But, they haven't done it on a consistent basis. So that's going to be something I'm going to be looking for in terms of what SC is going to do.
Yeah, and it feels like even when defenses are getting hit by Marquis Step, even when Notre Dame was kind of getting giving up chunk plays to him. It still felt like they were comfortable with that because it still felt like USC was uncomfortable doing that. It never feels like they embraced it. And I understand sort of when you hear the coaches talk about Marquise Stepp, it's understandable his role so far. That there are certainly questions, it feels like, from the coaches about ball security with him. And he absolutely said this week, against Notre Dame, there were times where I'm in traffic and the ball is not secured. And if you're USC looking at that going into the Notre Dame game and you're saying over and over and over, we can't lose the ball, we have to have no turnovers, I understand a little bit of the trepidation of just going to him over and over and over when he has 5 guys hanging on him and you're worried a little bit about ball control. That seems like a recipe for that ball to come out. So for me, that's where I think that stands. I think the coaches still see the negatives in him. And I don't mean that probably as harshly as it comes out. I think that there's still some idea from the coaches that he's not a fully complete package yet. And as fans, as media, we see him go in and just light guys up and be impossible to tackle. And you see kind of the high ceiling that he can bring in. If you're worried about fumbling, that's where I can kind of understand a little bit trying to limit his carries and get an understanding of kind of what he's capable of. Certainly at this point in the year, my feeling, let it go. If he loses a fumble against Arizona, you've got to be able to score enough points to make that up and to win that game. At Notre Dame, I understand. Maybe it's kind of a razor thin margin for error there. But would I love to see him kind of let loose and really lean in to picking up yards on the ground and being comfortable. I mean, we saw, we've seen it from Clay Helton teams in the past where they can lean into the run game and just kind of get that momentum going. I think this is a game that sets up perfectly for Marquise Stepp to do that. And I also am interested to see what kind of tempo this offense plays at. In the second half against Notre Dame, things started picking up. Keaton Slovis said this week, we ran some plays quickly enough where Notre Dame wasn't set. He obviously got comfortable in that. I understand, again, in the first half, if you want to let him kind of get his feet wet in that environment, in that setting, you want to make sure the play is called the way it's supposed to go, the way it's supposed to run. But boy, at home, again, against this defense, if it's ever going to pick up for a full game and go, this seems like the time to do it. For
100%. 100%. Mm-hmm. I think that's, it's really how SC coaches want to play it. If they want to play it on both sides of the ball, we're going to see some real coaching take place, some real strategy. We're going to see some real adjustments because I think Arizona is going to come out and let it all hang out on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think they want to get to Slovis. They want to test his courage. I thought Slovis did a remarkable job considering he's coming off a concussion. I don't think SC is going to play any more physical a defense than they played against Notre Dame. I think Oregon's got a good defense. But I think that he showed that he will get out of the pocket. He had no interceptions. So I think that, there's a lot of positives. But I'm sure that Arizona will try to get to him at some level and test him.
And that's one thing about Arizona's defense. They do not get to the quarterback this year. 5 total sacks. I think either 3 or 3.5 are coming from one guy. This is something where the USC offensive line should certainly be able to establish themselves early and for the full 60 minutes. We're going to jump into we'll get to our pick for this game in a little bit, but there's a couple other real interesting Pac-12 games this week. And Greg, we'll kind of bounce back and forth on picks for these. The other game that we sort of alluded to earlier in the Pac-12 South, you have 4 2-1 teams. Arizona, USC are going to square up Saturday night, 6:30. Before that, you're going to get Arizona State going out to Utah. And for me, that's a kind of a fascinating game to see how that plays out. USC is obviously rooting for Utah. I mean, you want to end up kind of in that tie with Utah if at worst case scenario. How do you see that one playing out? Again, Arizona State going up to Utah.
Well, I think Utah will beat Arizona State because the game's at Utah. I think that Utah, they're going to have their backfield intact, of my understanding. I think the Muss, which is the crowd that supports the Utes, will be in volume 10 level. And we're going to have to see how Arizona State's young quarterback reacts to it. I think, if Arizona State can beat Utah, in Salt Lake City, that's going to make possibly the SC Arizona State game, coming up in November, a huge game. That could be the game for the South Division. So I'm going to watch this game, but I am going to take the Utes. I think they're just going to be, they're ready to go.
I'm gonna take Arizona State, mostly because I want to be different than you, but also they've gone to Michigan State and won. They've gone to Cal and won. They know how to go and play against a great defense. And so I think it happens. I think it's the Pac-12. I think you can guess whatever you want, and it doesn't really matter because something insane, is probably going to happen. The other one is taking place in the Pac-12 North. Oregon going up to take on Washington. This, with Stanford's, you mentioned it earlier, just free fall this season. Oregon, Washington, the kind of clearly the two best teams. I think in the North, although Washington somehow has that loss to Stanford and Cal playing better, but this is the game that is always, recently at least, decided that Pac-12 North. And for me, I think Oregon is that good. I think that Oregon defense is that good. And I think we've seen a couple, data points from Washington now that says maybe they're not that good.
Well, the problem with Washington is, you don't know which Husky team is going to show up. Okay. I do think that, you can argue that Washington's a better team when they're at Husky Stadium, but then look what they did. They ring off 54 points or whatever they did last week outside of Husky Stadium. I am going to go with Oregon. I think Oregon has so much to gain as well as so much to lose. And I don't trust the Washington team that I'm seeing. There's no consistency to them. Although I think that Washington will be well coached in the game. But I just think that Oregon's got too much and Autzen Stadium behind them.
All right. And then let's go. The game that matters. Arizona coming out to the Coliseum. Arizona, USC. How do you see this one playing out?
SC will – okay, let me paraphrase this. If SC plays as well as SC can play and Arizona plays as well as they can play, SC will win because they have way too many skilled players on offense, and this is not a good Arizona defense. I mean, SC is what, an 8.5 point, opened an 8.5 point favorite, which isn't exactly, double digits. But I think, Arizona can't afford any turnovers, but then again, neither can USC. But I'll take the Trojans in this one.
I'm with you on that. I think it's probably high scoring. I think Khalil Tate, again, fully healthy or just mostly healthy. I think he does things that this USC defense has trouble with. And I think the weapons he has specifically in that backfield, I think they're going to be able to move the ball. USC giving up almost 200 yards a game on the ground. There's going to be some plays made by this Arizona offense. I think USC's offense found something in that second half against Notre Dame. I think coming back home, I think the boost that Marquis Stepp has, I actually think I love Vavai Malapai as a running back. If he wants to be, the lead, if he was the lead back at USC every single year, I think they'd be in good hands. I think actually paring it down to just those two guys maybe clears things up somehow a little bit in this game. And I think one of those true freshmen that we mentioned in the secondary, I think they're going to come up with a big play, whether it's just knocking a ball down or making a great tackle in the backfield or maybe coming up with an interception. I get a feeling that these defensive backs, when they were all signed, it looked like, okay, that's depth down the road. Certainly you didn't expect them to be called upon this early. I think they can play, and I have a lot of faith in defensive backs coach Greg Burns and what he's been able to do so far. So I think a big play from them. I think a lot of points from the USC offense as they get things going on the ground and through the air. And I don't know if it's a big USC win because, like I said, Arizona can score a lot of points and they can do it late too, as they've shown against USC. But a USC win on homecoming against the Arizona Wildcats. So hopefully we're all watching that Saturday night. For Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC Game Day.